Alice felt a shift within her, a subtle change in perspective. The fear receded, replaced by a sense of resolve and a curious detachment. She recognized the voice as belonging to Desi, one of her lesser-known alters, the one who always seemed to have a plan, a strategy for every situation. Desi, the diplomat, the negotiator, the one who could charm her way out of any predicament, stepped forward. She greeted the VA staff with a warm smile and a firm handshake, her confidence a stark contrast to Alice's usual timidity. She navigated the intake process with practiced ease, answering questions with clarity and composure that surprised even herself. Alice, watching from the sidelines of her own mind, felt a flicker of admiration for Desi's competence. Perhaps, she thought, there was hope after all. Robin, her therapist at the VA, was a kind and compassionate woman who patiently guided Alice through the tangled maze of her complex post-traumatic stress disorder. She helped her connect with the different parts of herself, to understand their roles and their motivations. She validated her pain, her confusion, her struggle to make sense of a world that often felt like a cruel and senseless joke. But the VA hospital, a mixed-gender ward filled with patients battling their own demons, was a dangerous place for someone as vulnerable as Alice. Gigi, drawn to the darkness, found a twisted sense of camaraderie with the other residents, their shared trauma creating a bond that both terrified and comforted her. Alice, meanwhile, felt increasingly lost and alone, her fragmented self struggling to find a foothold in a reality that shifted and blurred with every passing moment. Then came David Billingsley, the social worker, a man who wore a mask of kindness to conceal his predatory intentions. He saw the vulnerability in Alice's eyes, the childlike innocence that lingered beneath the surface of her trauma. He zeroed in on the baby, the youngest and most vulnerable of her alters, showering her with attention and affection. He played games with her, read her stories, whispered sweet nothings in her ear. He became her confidant, her protector, her friend. One afternoon, he invited the baby to his office, a small, cluttered space with a window overlooking the hospital grounds. He sat beside her on the floor, surrounded by brightly colored toys and picture books. The baby, feeling safe and cherished, snuggled close to him, her small hand resting trustingly in his. "You're special, Alice," he murmured, his voice a soothing balm. "You're precious." He leaned in, his lips brushing against her ear, his breath warm against her skin. The baby, innocent and unaware of the danger, closed her eyes, savoring the feeling of closeness and affection. But just as his hand reached for her, a sudden shift occurred. Alice felt a surge of protectiveness, a fierce determination to shield the baby from harm. Gigi, the hardened survivor, the one who had endured countless violations, pushed to the front. Her eyes, filled with a dull ache of resignation, met David's gaze. "Don't you dare touch her," Gigi said, her voice flat and devoid of emotion. David, startled by the sudden change in demeanor, paused. He tried to regain control, to reassert his authority, but Gigi simply stared at him, her expression blank, her body still. "I said don't touch her," she repeated, her voice barely a whisper. David, sensing a different kind of vulnerability, a surrender that both intrigued and excited him, shifted his focus. He saw the resignation in Gigi's eyes, the quiet acceptance of her fate, and a new kind of hunger, a twisted desire to possess her, to consume her brokenness, took root. He lunged at Gigi, his hands grabbing at her, his body pressing against hers. Gigi didn't fight back. She didn't scream or cry. She simply closed her eyes and endured, her body a vessel, her mind a distant observer. David, his lust fueled by her passivity, violated her, his grunts of satisfaction echoing in the sterile silence of the office. Gigi's body, already scarred and broken, endured another assault, another betrayal. Her mind, fractured and fragile, retreated further into the darkness, seeking refuge from the unbearable reality. David, emboldened by Gigi's silence, continued his abuse, his assaults becoming more frequent and more brazen. He enlisted the help of Lucius Campbell, the anger management counselor, and Derek, the med nurse, their twisted desires feeding off of Alice's vulnerability. Alice died 1,000 deaths on that lock ward. Her body, already scarred and violated, became a battleground for conflicting desires and agendas of her alters. Her mind, fractured and fragile, shattered into 1,000,000 pieces, each one a reflection of the trauma she had endured. She got pregnant again, another life conceived in violence and despair. The discovery, during an ultrasound for suspected appendicitis, was a cruel reminder of her powerlessness. Her medical records, a litany of horrors, revealed 13 pregnancies, a lost fallopian tube, a history of abuse that stretched back to her childhood. The Navy, eager to avoid a scandal, rushed her back to active duty, pressured her to sign away her rights, to bury the truth beneath a mountain of paperwork. Alice, her mind a wasteland, her spirit broken, complied. Annabelle, ever the pragmatist, took control during pregnancy. He refused to allow an abortion, his reasons a mystery even to Alice. He nurtured the child within, a symbol of hope in a world devoid of light. Eric, meanwhile, continued his charade, using Alice's debit card to fund his escapades. His betrayal is a constant reminder of her own vulnerability. When Alice finally returned to him, broken, he welcomed her back with open arms, his charm a mask for his own selfish desires.